All right, this video is all about the Weatherwool all-around jacket. This is the latest model. I just got this. I've only had it for about probably not quite a week. It's really nice, but they've made some design changes that are exclusive to this new one that you're not going to see posted on their website yet. And I haven't had one of the older models, so I might miss a few things or get a few things wrong. I'll try not to do that. And then for the source of comparison, because it's always nice to have a source of comparison, I have a Filson Double Mack cruiser, and it's not necessarily the best comparison. Probably a more direct comparison would be a Filson Cape Coat. The Cape Coat is similar to this in that only the shoulders are caped. On the Double Mack, you're caped all the way through the arms too, so you actually have 2 layers of wool all the way up your arms, whereas on this jacket, you don't have that. That's really the only major difference between them other than brand and price. In any case, I'll start with the Weatherwool here at the collar, and this collar is phenomenal. It goes up very high, and it comes with the throat latch, which in this particular jacket, we now have 3 buttons here on the pocket, where you used to have 2. And there's a zip. And here's the throat latch. It's buttoned in. And they added an extra buttonhole to the throat latch so you can actually adjust how tight you want it. I'm not actually going to attach it for this because that's kind of clumsy and it'll take me forever. But you can put this throat latch on here and you basically have a scarf replacement. And you can also tighten it to the next buttonhole over and get it in there real tight. You can see how high that collar comes up, and that's really nice. Something else worth mentioning about all Weatherwool products is that they're made out of Rambouillet wool, and it's much softer than the kind of wool that you're going to find typically in jackets like these. For example, the Filson, which has Filson's Mackinaw wool, by comparison is super scratchy. You know, if you compare this to like an army wool blanket or a lot of other like Mackinaw-ish type wools, this is pretty good. It's not too rough, and I'm not sensitive to it at all personally, but there is a huge difference between this and this. I mean, this thing is like getting hugged by a sheep, and every good Welshman, you know, appreciates how that feels. But beyond that, this is just super soft. I mean, you can wear this all the time, and it's never going to leave you with any kind of scratchy feel unless you're super sensitive to wool. But in my case, I love it. It's just like the softest blanket in the world. So moving on, I went over the collar and the throat latch. Now we're going to look at these buttons that run along here, and that is for an alternative storage method for the throat latch. If you don't want the throat latch in your pocket, you can button it up here under the collar and it will remain hidden, and you can just unbutton one side and flip it around and have it there. It doesn't get really cold where I live that often, so I'm just going to keep it here in the pocket. And the other option is the double hood. Weatherwool makes a hood, and you can button it on there and leave it on, or button it on and off as you need. I have the hood coming. It should be here tomorrow, but I don't have it today. Otherwise, I'd be showing it. And so maybe I'll come back and show that separately. But in any case, moving down, we have the caping. And the caping is just through the shoulders. And you can see these points on the caping. And that those points are so that if this top layer of wool gets soaked, the water will drip off at the point. So it's a predictable location for the water to drip off. And you'll see in the back here, there's also a point in the back, and that's pretty cool, just to concentrate that so you don't have little random drips of water everywhere. Trying to think here. So probably the next thing to look at is the cuffs, and the cuffs are awesome on this. You have 3 buttons for adjustment, and so I usually leave it on the second, And if you leave it on the second, you know, at least for me, I'm a fairly large guy with large hands. I can get my hands in and out. You know, I'm wearing a pretty big watch on this side, no problem. If you really want to seal out the elements though, you can choke them down to the lowest set, and that really chokes down on my wrist. I mean, it's almost like wearing a cuff, like on a hoodie or something like that. Like, what would you call that? Anyway, the little expandable cuffs, but it fits really tight and it works really well. And especially if you had a glove that went up your wrist, that would really seal it in good, which is excellent. Internally, we have a draw cord right here. It's a little piece of shot cord, and on each side. And what you can do with that is, if you want to completely seal out updrafts, you can put some tension on that, and when you shut the jacket, zip or button, or zip and button, and I'll get to that in a second, it really creates a waste and it just seals out those updrafts. So that's another thing that's really cool and unique to this coat. For example, this one does not have that. And yeah, I'm not really aware of anything else that does, but it's pretty cool feature. Yes, so the zipper, we'll get to that now since it's on the brain. Weatherwool zippers are pretty sweet. They always do double zips. So all their products that come with zippers, you'll have, you know, the ability to zip it, but you can zip it up from the bottom, which is neat. Like, you know, if you're riding a motorcycle or sitting on a horse or something and you want to do that, you can do that sitting down. This one has buttons as well, and we'll go over the buttons in a second because they're kind of unique. But you can button and zip. You can, any combination thereof of button and zipping. Oftentimes I just button it. If it's really cold out, it's nice to be able to zip. And then what's new to this jacket is the buttons used to be offset and the zipper was centered. So when you had the jacket buttoned, it'd be off to the side here. The new one here, obviously they've centered the buttons, so the zipper's offset, and that actually looks, I think, better. Like I said, I haven't seen the older style in person, so, you know, I don't really know. Maybe some people like that style choice better. I'm not exactly a fashionista. I don't really care, but it's you know, I think it looks better to have them centered. Another thing that's really cool about this jacket is it has these ginormous cargo pockets. These things are massive. Each one of these is probably about the size of 2 of the cargo pockets on the Mackinac. And similar to the Mackinac, the hand warmer pocket goes behind the cargo pocket. So if you do have a lot of stuff in the cargo pocket, I suppose it could probably impede access to the hand warmer. I don't really have that problem. And comparing the Mackinac with the all-around jacket, the entry is probably pretty close to about the same size, but the actual interior volume of the hand warmer pocket on this one is much bigger, and that probably just has to do with the fact that this is a much bigger cargo pocket to put your hand behind. So that's kind of nice. Even if your hands are gloved, you should still be able to get them in here as long as you're not wearing super bulky ski gloves or something like that. Yeah, and then I think I went over the cargo pocket already, where you have 3 buttons now instead of 2, and then it zips as well, which is pretty cool. Yeah, and that kind of sums up the major features there. I think I'd like to go over the interior pockets, which is pretty cool on this. You have 4 interior pockets. I don't think the old style had 4. So you've got an upper on each side on the top. Obviously it's an upper. And you have a lower, and the lower is larger than the upper. And the zippers are actually a little bit different between them too, but you can fit, I mean, they're sizable pockets. You can fit a lot of stuff in there. So this is kind of like Batman's utility belt in a jacket. So I'm coming to it last, but I think it's probably the most important point, is Weatherwool on their website, they state themselves as being a fabric company that got into making garments. So their fabric is truly a unique thing. And that's probably where I should have started, was talking about their fabric. And this fabric is a Rambouillet wool, and a Rambouillet sheep is a descendant of merino sheep. You can Google that if you want more information about about that stuff. But they do a jacquard, I guess you'd call it a weave on the fabric. So it's a really durable fabric, and it does a really great job at stopping wind and obviously keeping elements out like rain. This is a much tighter weave than Filson Mackinaw. So if you're very familiar with Filson Mackinaw, you know, for example, if you were to hold it up to a light, you'd see a lot more light through the Mackinaw than you would through this. And this is much better at stopping wind than Mackinaw. And I have other Filson garments that are made out of Mackinaw at different thicknesses, and I have other Weatherwool garments made out of obviously their fabric at different thicknesses, and I can just flat out tell you layer for layer. If you're comparing one layer of Weatherwool to one layer of Mackinaw, there's no comparison. The Weatherwool will keep out way more rain for way longer. In fact, I've never had any water get through Weatherwool, even the midweight. And that's after being out in the rain for a pretty long time. And then stopping wind, I haven't had a lot of experience with wind with the midweight, but with the full weight Weatherwool, yeah, I mean, they say on the website that it's supposed to stop out 15-mile-an-hour wind. Yeah, it will do that. I've had it out at the ocean and the Washington coast, Oregon coast, and yeah, the wind out there gets pretty good, and never had wind penetrate out there. So, you know, that's not a storm, that's just a normal day. So I imagine the wind gusts that I was getting into were up to 15, if not higher. No problem with the anorak. At that time I did not have this, so I was wearing the anorak, and it stopped all that wind, no problem. Ocean spray too, no big deal, beads right off, just falls right off. So yeah, other points of comparison, I kind of want this to be a little bit of a comparison video, because I think this is going to be one of the closest forms of competition for the all-around jacket in terms of performance. And that is, you don't have, on these Filson jackets, a lot of times you don't have a lot of adjustability to the cuff. I think the single Mac might have 2 buttons. This one does not. It has 1 button, and you can undo the button and get a lot more room, but you can't tighten it. And that has kind of bothered me sometimes. It's nice to be able to seal in your wrists. This particular Double Mack does not have an interior pocket. This is an older one, and it's also a red tag. So that means it came from the old factory outlet store they used to have in, I believe it was Mount Vernon. And I didn't buy this from there directly. I bought this used. So this actually isn't even eligible for the Filson warranty. So I don't know if the interior pocket was an oversight, or if they just didn't use interior pockets back in the 90s, when I think this jacket's probably from the 90s or earlier. You can tell by the tag, I guess, but I'm not super into it. Yeah, and then another thing that's different, again, is I already went over it, the caping goes all the way down the arms on this one, but the Weatherwool does not have pockets underneath the caping. The Filson does. So if you want more exterior pockets, you know, maybe the Filson's a better choice for that. But, you know, you do make up for that with a lot of interior pockets on this guy. And these cargo pockets, these 2 cargo pockets, are probably the same volume, if not more volume, than both of these combined and both of these combined. So you get roughly the same storage, just not as much it's not as divided on the exterior on the all-around jacket. Well, yeah, that's about it. The last thing I'd like to throw in there is that the all-around jacket, the full weight wool that it's made from, is much thicker and heavier than 1 layer of the Mackinaw. And I didn't measure it, but it feels much more substantial. So I think that if you were to compare this to the Filson cape coat, which is only caped in the shoulders and not the arms, I mean, from my experience with both Filson and Weatherwool, I think you'd see a lot more performance from an equivalent Weatherwool product. And in fact, I can't say definitively because I've only had this for a week and I haven't used it in any kind of hardcore condition, and I don't do a lot of hardcore outdoor stuff. So I'm not the guy to check out if you want info on like living in this for a month outside with no outside assistance. I'm just not that guy. I'm a suburban dad. But as far as rain resistance, wind resistance, and just being outside and being warm, I expect this to outperform even the Double Mack. And so far, that's been my experience in this past week. I've used these both in very similar conditions, and the performance of this one is light years beyond what this one does. That being said, obviously, I'm a big fan of Filson. I'm not trashing Filson's products. I love Filson. I still shop at Filson. I will continue to shop at Filson. I'm surrounded in my garage here with Filson jackets and other Filson hats. I have Filson wool hats. Love their products. And this is a great jacket. It's a great coat. It's tough to top, but Weatherwool did it. But here's the deal. This is an $850 coat, right? This I bought used for $80. You can't find a used Weatherwool all-around jacket for $80. Not that I'm aware of, and if you do, you ought to buy it or you're a fool. But these do retail, I believe, at the moment for $450 or $500, something like that. It's somewhere in that range. It's somewhere between $4 and $5. You can routinely find these in the factory outlet in Tulalip, brand new, without a red tag, so they're still eligible for the full warranty and all that. I've seen them anywhere from $180 to $220, and that's brand new. So, I mean, that's a really good buy, man. $200 for a Double Mack. I mean, you're doing really well. But for those of you who are considering using wool in really hardcore conditions, the all-around jacket is the hands-down winner. All the threading in this is hydrophobic. The buttons on this, which I'll show you right here, they're called slot buttons. I've never seen this on anything else other than Weatherwool products. And they use nylon tape and run it through it. Like, the way that they tailor these has got to just be a total pain in the rear. It's incredible. But yeah, I mean, look at that. And it's all their buttons on this jacket are that way. The wrists, these buttons here are up here on the, yeah, they're all like that. And the anorak I have, all the buttons are like that. The hoodie I have doesn't have buttons. And on the Double Mack, you have the good old regular 4-hole button. And there's nothing wrong with that. They work fine. But I mean, I don't know how you break this. And I believe the buttons themselves are actually made out of a much stronger material than the buttons that Filson uses. And obviously the Filson has snaps as well. The Weatherwool only has buttons and or zippers. And really, these are both excellent jackets. You can always check the Weatherwool's weatherwool.com specials page, and maybe you'll find a good deal. But there's a look at the brand new all-around jacket. There's a little bit of a comparison there with the Filson, and either way you go, you're gonna win. But my endorsement would be for Weatherwool. I have this, I have an anorak, I have a hoodie. I love them all. They're fantastic. You can't go wrong. They're a great company. They're all American. Everything involved in the making of their products, everything is American. I even read on their website they were debating about a particular type of button choice for one of their newer women's products, because the buttons, the material for the buttons doesn't come from the United States. The buttons are made here, but the material for the buttons doesn't come here. That's how intense they are on their American manufactured standard. So if you really want to support an American company, a small family-owned business, people who really care about what they're doing, care about their reputation, and have the best customer service, Weatherwool's the way to go. Thanks.